All right. Here is Joanna Pilatovic from rainy Germany to sunny California. I have someone very special to introduce you today. She is a dancer, filmmaker, producer, scriptwriter, director. I met her in Venice while my author meeting, and she really piqued my interest, not only being a creative, but she dreams a lot, and her content is amazing, probably influencing her work, but we will find out about it. Welcome to the show, Callie Lyons. Hi there.
Hello. Hi, thank you for having me on, and good morning from Los Angeles. I'm so excited to speak with you and talk to you about my work, creativity, also my dreams, and the intuitive aspect of myself. So I'm very looking forward to how this conversation flows.
Oh, yes. So we're gonna get to it.
Let's do
Uh,
it.
uh, First of all, did I introduce you correctly? Would you like to add anything to what you are doing or share what you currently are doing?
Well, the introduction was perfect. I am, however, working on another short film that's going to be set in New Orleans. So I'm just preparing for that and just getting things organized for that. I've already written the script. It's just a matter of finding the right crew and getting funding for it. But the film I've made previously just screened in Edinburgh and in New York back in June. So it's had a little festival run and still applying to festivals. And so I've had great audiences for it. And it's amazing to be able to share your work with people you don't know because you don't quite know how they're going to receive it. So that for me was such an interesting and enlightening experience, and taught me a lot about my own work, things that I don't even really see or am aware of, but people bring it to my attention, and it makes me look back at my work and think like, okay, what exactly was I doing here? Because I think a lot of times I'm creating from either unconsciously or from my subconscious, and I'm just doing and doing, but then some people are able to see it and really extract certain details that I
Mhm.
was not aware of. So that was an amazing opportunity to be able to communicate with people about my work in that aspect.
That sounds very exciting. You mentioned the aspect of consciousness and subconsciousness. And
Mm,
I recently heard, probably from Robert Greene, talking about human nature, that most of what we do comes from our subconscious mind.
mm, mm.
95%, he's saying. So that is an interesting part that first we probably create and then we look at that and get conscious about our creation.
Completely.
But how it is for you then? How do you create? What drives you really to do what you're doing? Why films? Why this form of creativity?
Yeah. So that's an interesting story. So I will start with I previously lived in New York. And when I was in New York, I was in graduate school at NYU studying dance. So I had a different trajectory for my career at that time. I wanted to be a dance professor in a university, and I wanted to dance in a dance company, and that was pretty much it. I was set in that. While in school, I had this urge, like I felt like there was something else about my creativity that was not being channeled or not being tapped into, or I wasn't utilizing. And I didn't know at the time what that was, but it felt like something was missing. And you know that feeling of like, something's not here. Something is not being like catapulted. And so I spent the first year just kind of, not thinking too much about it, but like it was still on my mind, like something else needs to be applied to my work. And then in the second year of the program, I started tapping more into filmmaking because there was a new media aspect of the program. It didn't go deeply into filmmaking, but it just kind of touched upon it with editing and how you can bring different forms of media into dance making. And so from there, I got really interested in film, and I was thinking, maybe there's something here. Maybe there's something I could bring into my dances to really fully encompass what it is I'm trying to evoke. And so I was like, okay, I'm still dancing, but I'm going to step to the side and really study filmmaking. So I started teaching myself a lot of stuff. I started watching a bunch of films. So I started watching a lot of independent films, a lot of foreign language films, in addition to doing a lot of production work, because I also wanted to just be on the ground learning and understanding how a production is actually made and how it actually works and operates. So I started working on different productions. And at the time, I was just like getting people coffee and making runs like that. Like,
Okay.
not the most exciting job on set, but everyone's role on set is important no matter what you're doing. So I really cherish those jobs. But I'm learning a lot, but I felt like I still needed a little bit more training to fully get a grasp of how this all operates from start to finish. So I finished my program at NYU, and I was actually dancing at the time. I joined a dance company, and I was also working in film. So I was towing both art forms simultaneously, but I was really getting into filmmaking. And at the time, I didn't realize that it would, develop into something else. It developed into what I'm doing now. But I was exploring this and really trying to make sense of my own creative palette, how it can be in dialogue with this art form.
Yeah.
So a couple of years later, after many failed attempts at making short films, I can think of 3 at the top of my head films that I tried to make that did not work out. Whether I could not get funding, whether something happened within the crew, people weren't available, or there was a time I actually was able to shoot some footage, but I wasn't able to get it edited. Like something was always blocking. And I was
What
like,
do you think that was, if I may ask? Because
sure.
every artist goes through these periods of times, and often the question is, shall we push it through or shall we wait? Is it not the right timing? What's going on
Mhm.
there?
I think it was a combination of many things. And so for me, whenever something comes in forms of threes or patterns of threes, I always have to take a step back and really look at what's happening because that's a sign. And so these 3 projects not happening was a sign. And so now I can look back and see that one, I don't think I was quite ready. But the big one was, I don't think I was creating authentically. And
Huh.
that's really what was the big message for me at that time, that the universe was coming in and saying no and stopping me because I was not creating authentically. I was creating how I thought I was supposed to be creating as a dancer working in the medium of film. Like I thought that I had to do it this way or I needed to do it that way. But the universe it was just like, no, this isn't how you're supposed to be creating with this form. But again, at
How,
the time, I
sorry
wasn't
to
thinking.
interrupt you. How did you
No.
discover that? Because again, what the artists are dealing with, like, maybe they should be more arrogant, maybe they should be more humble. There is always this transition, how they should act to push forward. Should they be
Mm,
confident or, yeah, more humble and waiting? How did you
mm,
discover that you possibly, because this is your judgment, we don't know, nobody
of course.
knows.
Of course.
If you were not authentic or you were, how did you
Mm.
discover it?
So there's 2 parts to this. So the authenticity aspect didn't come till later, but what I did notice in the moment was I'm not ready to do this quite yet. So I have different options of what I can do. I can either continue to self-study or I can go into a program and learn at a more accelerated speed and get all the knowledge I can in a really short amount of time. And so I decided to do that. And over time, I ended up going to film school in LA. So I moved back to LA because I was here originally for college, and then I moved to New York, and now I'm back here. But my only thing was about film school. This was my only stipulation. Once I got everything I needed, I'm leaving. Like, I'm not going to stay the entire time. I don't want to exhaust all of my resources and money on more
Uh-huh.
studying. So for me, it was more of learn as much as I can, learn as much as I can about myself as an artist. And then once I've got it, you can go. Like, there's no point of holding you to school for the sake of a degree. This is just my own personal philosophy. I know everyone has their own feelings about schooling, but I've had plenty of degrees. I don't feel like I need more. So I moved back to LA and I started studying. And I remember telling myself before school started, like, however I'm supposed to create, I want that to flow through me. And I just want to be an honest storyteller, no matter what I'm being taught, no matter what my colleagues or other classmates are doing. I just want to create as true as I can to myself. And like, that's that. And I just kind of spoke that out to the universe. And however, yes, and however that would be channeled through me, I just allowed that to happen. And so while in the program, I was creating different films and I was just kind of working just intuitively and just by instinct. And a lot of times, you know, people were puzzled by my structure because it wasn't your classical 3-act structure like that's taught in film school. So I was creating from my own structure and I was weaving in all of these different elements that on paper didn't quite register or might have confused people, but then when they saw it play out visually, it's like, oh, I see what you're doing. So my language as a filmmaker makes more sense visually than it does on paper. And so I ended up spending 3 semesters in the program. The semester is actually 6 semesters long. After the 3rd semester, I decided to step away because I felt like I got it. And I was like, I learned everything I need to learn. I learned about producing. I learned about cinematography and directing. And so I'm like, I can step away and move forward in my own path. And I trusted that when many people were either telling me, don't do that, or what are you doing? That's not a good idea. But I felt confident, like, no, I need to step away and do this. And that's when I created this latest short film I made called Edge of Red that is being screened at festivals. And it just felt right. Like I couldn't quite explain it. But I say that to say in the midst of creating Edge of Red is when the authenticity light bulb came on. And I was like, I see why those other projects weren't working because Edge of Red I was able to make, get it done, get it screened. I'm like, here it is. I was able to birth this. Okay, what was happening? What's different here compared to what was happening several years ago? And I was able to look, and the one thing that I discovered was Edge of Red felt so authentically me, so authentic to my own creation, to my imagination, to my intuition, whereas those other projects weren't working from that. And so 2-3 years later, I was able to see that. But it took a lot of, processes to get there, to be able to come to that conclusion.
You sound very confident and convincing with your approach and how you even talking about your project. That's fantastic because this is also a sign, probably, whether the universe or from your inner self, that what you're doing is absolutely yours. With your creation overall, what is your message to the world? Because obviously you do it for some reason. What is your reasoning beyond your creation?
That's a great one because I think that is in line with life purpose and my mission on this planet, in this life embodiment at this time. I think it's all in conversation. And so I sit with that often and think, what is my mission here on earth? Like what is it that I'm supposed to be doing? And I believe everyone has a soul's mission. It's like whether you want to step into it or not is your own, that's up to you to decide. That's from your own willpower. But I'm like, I really feel like I have a mission here and I'm still extracting and earthing what that could be. But I do sense that I'm here to tell stories and to inspire people to tell stories themselves or to tap into their own artistry and imagination. And I think also to not confine yourself to expectations and limiting yourself based on society's pressures. So often and I think that I'm supposed to be an agent to ignite that in people, but oftentimes I think it can make people a little uncomfortable because it does depart from convention, and anything that departs from convention, no matter what it is, whether it's a thought, you know, a belief, a job, what have you, it's always kind of met with a little bit of consternation or a little bit of, you know, questioning. And I mean, I think that's just natural as humans. I think that's a defense mechanism in a way. But
Yeah.
I do believe that my particular mission on this planet is to kind of be that agent to really get people to tap into that imagination, tap back into that childlike kind of curiosity and interest and playfulness. And I think it's as simple as that, while also bringing in our histories, bringing in, you know, elements of family lineage and connecting that to our present moment and how that can inspire us or how it can lead us forward in our life. So I think that's a short answer to describe.
Yeah, it's a longer probably one. You're cutting out a little bit, but let's see. Okay, fantastic. You are back.
Okay.
Uh-huh. Let's get maybe, if you don't mind, to the content of your short film.
Sure.
Is it about what you were portraying there? What is the most important here?
Okay, so the film is called Edge of Red, and it's a part of a trilogy of short films. So it's the first part, and then the second one is the one I'm creating in New Orleans, and then the third one I'm going to create in Charleston, South Carolina. But Edge of Red is, I would say, the most autobiographical of the three stories, and it's based on a bunch of sequences and events from my childhood. And I actually picked events from my childhood in which my memory of the event was actually a little unclear. And I chose that on purpose as opposed to choosing an event or a situation in which I remember every detail. And so that was it was kind of an interesting exercise for me when I was writing. And I was like, okay, let me tap back into those moments that were either confusing or not sure if it actually happened or if it was a dream, or the things that I felt unclear about, and I started journaling about it. And I didn't want to ask questions from my family because initially I was going to ask my family to either confirm things or relay information that I didn't have. But instead of doing that, I decided to just journal about it as much as I could. Even the things that confused me, I journaled about it. And so from there, I was like, okay, I have all of these different sequences. Now what do I do with this? And so then I was like, okay, I'm just going to bridge them together through dance. And so I decided to dance. And then I called my family and I asked, okay, did this thing happen or did I dream this? Okay, this happened. Because I would say maybe 25% of the things I was recalling I thought were dreams, but they actually were things that happened on the physical plane of how we're existing now.
You had this feeling that you're not quite sure whether something is dream or not. For people who are dreaming a lot, this is amazing. The amazing thing, and it's very common that I hear, like, oh my God, is this my memory or was it a dream?
Yes.
And sometimes it's both.
Yes. And this is what I've discovered as I've gotten older. But it's funny because I was channeling to my childhood. So I was channeling from the ages of 5 to 8. And I did that on purpose because for me, there was a time, I would say between 5 and 10, those were years that I actually don't remember a lot of things about my life. And I've been doing a lot of work to uncover why that is and what exactly was happening. And I did have a very traumatic incident that is in the film of when I got hit with the metal baseball bat. And I haven't been able to fully confirm this, but I have a feeling that event did something to my brain where I started to shut things off to protect myself. So for me, yeah, it was like an interesting, you know, journey for me to like go back into that really tough place and going into something that you don't quite remember what happened or you don't quite know if it was a dream, and that traumatic experience of getting hit in the head may have had something to do with that. And so it was kind of painful and emotional experience for me to like go back to that place, but I think it's helped me actually recall things in an interesting way. So I'm able to recall things from my childhood, and it's like, oh, I have more clarity on this thing because I've been able to like really go into it and really open up the pages of that book and really look at it and really have to do that work and even doing work through meditations and conscious dream work to kind of unearth those things to get more information.
Mm-hmm.
But I will, but
I
yes,
have thousands of questions at the moment when you talk about all these things, because first of all, when you talk about understanding and getting clarity about yourself, this is a very strong tool to understand the other people when you do understand yourself. So creating a story of yourself, your deepest truth, it may be inspiring for other people to look at them the same way with an understanding instead of judgment or what they should or should not do.
Mm-hmm.
And then you touch on this dreaming aspect, whether you did lucid dreaming or just, conscious dreaming or any type of spiritual slash psychological work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it is also tapping yourself into dimensions that are beyond probably perception sometimes. And if
Mm-hmm.
you are able to bring that for your filmmaking, this can have profound impact, I think, on others. So I'm going to touch on those dreaming aspects. How do dreams and other maybe percepting realities in a different way, in an intuitive, maybe as psychic, how that influences
I think that's such a important question to ask because I think the dream realm plays a big factor into my everyday walking life in this physical embodiment, both just as a human having a human experience and as an artist creating. And there's so much information in dreams. There's so much stuff we could take from it in dreams through meditation, through any guidance that isn't of what we believe of this world. Like there's so much information. And I always say that everything is information, everything. And then dreams, especially, whether it's confirmation, whether it's giving you insight, whether it's clarifying, whether it's giving you a sign to say yes or no, go this way, go that way. So for me, my dream state is like a very powerful experience for me. And I get many confirmations in it. And I got many confirmations for my film Edge of Red through it, whether it was, I actually saw um, scenes in my film that I didn't even know was going to be an aspect of the project until I finished. And for me, it's very important that I journal dreams. It doesn't happen often, but dreams that feel very significant, I journal. And so actually the other day I was going through my log because I have my dreams logged in different places, whether written out or in my phone. So I was going through all of my logs and I actually wrote out some things that I saw in my dreams that were in my film that I had no idea was going to like make it in there, or I didn't know how it was going to be incorporated. And then I also had a dream about a screening of this film and how people would receive it. And then thinking back, it paralleled a lot of my experiences in these past two screenings I've had in June. And again, at the time when I was having this dream, I wasn't thinking too much about it, even though it felt significant. And then going back and playing that event in my head, I'm like, wow, it really paralleled. So I think dreams are so important. And obviously, you can go in and do work in your dream state, conscious dream work. And so for me, that's a very important thing. And I get so many intuitive hits in dreams and I get so many confirmations, and I think it's so beautiful.
Fantastic. Another question emerges from that for me personally. What questions, because this is a communication from our whether higher self or subconscious self or some source we don't quite understand or see. It's maybe another way of perceiving the world or dimension. How do you talk? How did you learn to communicate with this essence of yours or something you are tapping? Do you have a name for it? Some people call it spirit guides. Some other people call it guardian angels, and it probably depends on the culture we live in and we are raised in to call it. But how do you communicate with that?
Yeah, I I use those names interchangeably. I use spirit guides, higher self, soul self, ancestors. I think I'm at this point now in my journey where it's all sort of the same to me. I know ascended master or angels. Me, I don't distinguish them as any different from one another. I think they're all relatively the same energies. I think so yeah, I use the words interchangeably. So, but the big one
Yeah.
I use are ancestors or guides.
Okay.
And I do feel like they come into my dream state and work with me. And once I started to understand the dream world a little more, I start calling them in to come into my dreams, whether to give me information, whether to heal something. That's also something I've been exploring, like healing through the dream realm. And it's just, I think the big one for me are the confirmations I get about things are otherworldly. But some people maybe dreams are actually, and then this reality is actually a dream. And so I go back and forth sometimes. It's like maybe the dream is like actually, you know, the real experience. But anywho, that's another
Yeah, that's very
conversation.
interesting. But I have a feeling we could keep going on and on about these topics.
Mhm.
If our audience would like to ask questions, that would be the best under this video because I could ask you much, much more right now about those dreams because that's my hobby. When you mentioned the word ancestors,
Mhm.
uh, I I felt it very strongly because that applies like directly to our past,
Mhm.
and there is a certain power within us. Within every culture is something different, but in some of the cultures it seems to be pretty strong, like stronger, and having
Yeah.
more impact on that. And when you mentioned that word, I felt
Mhm.
sort of something stronger within my body that it plays enormous role, and the words have also vibrations. So when you know who you are working with, I think it has a tremendous impact on understanding also the information.
I agree 100%. And the interesting thing for me about ancestors are um, I know everyone has their own interpretation of past lives, interpretation of, you know, coming back again and again and again, the karmic wheel. But sometimes I like to think that, like, we are our own ancestors at times, just depending on who's guiding you at the moment. Like your guide could actually be you from another lifetime. And so
Yeah,
sometimes I start to think about ancestors as like, oh wow, it's like myself giving me guidance, or
yeah.
even like your future self giving you guidance. And so sometimes I think about it that way and it like shifts my perspective about like our knowing and
It
what
can
we
be
know.
you.
Yeah, and it's like, wow, I actually am way more expansive than I give myself credit. I actually have way more cosmic knowledge than I give credit. I actually can tap into things, um, can
Mhm.
tap into experiences from other lifetimes or future timelines. And so, yes, when I'm invoking ancestors, I'm invoking in particular people, whether that's a grandmother or what have you. But I do feel like there are times when I'm invoking just like an aspect of myself, and I can feel the distinction, excuse me, the distinction
Yeah.
at times on whether I'm calling in like a particular person or if I'm just calling myself in, you know. And so that for me has been a very interesting experience in expanding my own understanding of like an ancestor and guides and how you could just be guiding your own self home in a lot of ways. So that for me is really fascinating.
I can totally follow you on this one because I also write about that particular concept that you can also, your soul can be so enormous and expanded, that perhaps only part of you comes to this particular lifetime. Maybe there is also another concept true, that you are existing already on another realms of being, I don't know where,
Yes.
and you may be interconnected and communicating in between them. That
Hmm.
concept also, it's very attractive to me from the spiritual sense, and also as a writer, as imaginative person.
I'm so with you. And that also makes me think a lot of times about certain artists. You may be creating, and then you could see someone else's work and think, wow, that looks just like my work, or
Yeah,
that's just like a thought I had. And it's nothing to do with plagiarism or copying. It could be
yeah,
literally your soul's tapping into the same divine information, the
yeah,
same, like you could be channeling the same source. And so sometimes I'm always interested, like when I see work that I feel so heavily connected to, and it's like, wow, I'm just creating from that same, vine from the source creation in a lot of ways. And so I think it's fascinating to think about that, how we're all so interconnected in that way. And obviously we're all unique beings and there's no person like us, but at the same time, we all are channeling from the same source energy. And it's just like really cool to like find those people in which your work are in dialogue with one another.
yeah, absolutely. Again, I cannot disagree.
Mm.
This time, I totally am in it, because these are my also topics, and I would say that artists, because of their way of feeling, perceiving the world on so many different levels, are making the way for others to be able to tap to these realms too, because we
Mm.
sort of bring those realms to other people so they can switch their perspective, and we sometimes it's uncomfortable, push
Yeah.
them out of balance in order so they can experience something more. And filmmaking, it's incredible for me personally, powerful tool to do that, because you can show your dance in it. You can show the other world. You have total control over the
Mhm.
picture, what's happening, and how you want to, with the music, with the sound, how you want to
Mhm.
influence, and how you want to tune in to maybe yourself, other people. For me, it's like you are channeling something, those important portions of information. If we're going to have another chance, I would dive a little bit more into your short film, because you addressed a number of very important issues, because all of us have to deal in our childhood with certain issues. And
Mhm.
impact, it has impact on us for our whole lifetime, if
Mhm.
not the other incarnations, if some people believe in. And it's very important, because some of these has are very heavy, and
Yes.
some of these are lighter. And I think, especially for artists, because they have to, in order to create, they have to push through those hardest moments. That Because in order to create, you have to look at yourself sincerely. What happened to you? To what degree? And how much you suffered? And then, if you want to be authentic, you have to bring that content, sort of transform it and edit it for others to
Mhm.
see what you want to portray. That's a
Mm.
hard one.
That the last little part of that, that's so interesting you say that. It is very tricky. It's a very vulnerable thing, but then
Yeah.
it's also like you have to start cutting off certain stuff. And that's where I think that it can be a conflict as someone who is channeling things directly from their own life experience. And then you get in and you start working with an editor, and it's like, oh, wow, now I have to be a little bit more methodical, a little more surgical about it. And
Yeah.
it's like, you know, how do I find this balance between staying authentic to this thing that I am bringing into the story and want to call in and have be portrayed on the screen, with also having to really, again, like I was saying, surgically remove things and have
Yeah.
it fit certain parameters and have to be a certain length of time. It can't be this long, because all of those things that you have to navigate and have this little dance with. But like I was just saying, having a dance with. So if I think of it like a dance and not get a little too serious or too heady or too in my brain about it, then it becomes like a more fluid experience. And just like embracing that, yes, I have to remove this thing for the sake of, you know, the parameters needed for a short film. And I've just like learned to embrace that as opposed to resist it or be frustrated by it. But it's a really interesting exploration and experiment. But I also truly believe what's supposed to be left on the screen is what's supposed to be there, and what's not supposed to be there is not intended to be there. It could have just been, I channeled this thing for the sake of having to channel it and work through it in my body or work through it in my emotions. And that's all it needed to do. And some aspects need to continue on and be birthed into an artistic expression. And so I think those things that continue down that pipeline of ending up in the final product are supposed to be in the final product. And the things along the path that end up getting taken away are not necessarily supposed to go any further in their journey. And so I've been looking at things in that perspective, and it's helped shaped kind of my thinking around the post-production process of filmmaking and having to cut scenes and all the whole thing. But it's
that
just
sounds like you edit yourself in a way. And it probably has also impact on your personality, on your growth in your life. That's a funny thing. And for some people, for some artists, it has also healing impact. Amazing. Like it's transforming whatever happened. It's transforming what can happen also to other people. I heard stories, for example, that when a writer or a scriptwriter wrote a specific thing for somebody else to heal somebody's life, then after reading that, within a few months, of course, that could be just a coincidence, it's a happy one, that it changed somebody's path, that somebody changed or come up with an idea how to solve the issue. And as an author, as a scriptwriter, you may think of something like, okay, let's put fairy dust into the story that solves the problem. And for somebody else, that fairy dust could be a solution that he really finds in his life. So it's interesting that your creation, you re-edit, you shape it in a certain way to give the most precise and concrete and the best product out there. But it also has impact on you, on what you improve, even while doing that. But it may also have a great impact on other people.
I so beautifully put. I think that's so important what you just said about the healing component, because I think that's essentially the ultimate. I don't want to use the word goal because I feel like goal implies that something ends. So I feel like the experience of being on this planet is just constant, but it's the ultimate soul's journey in healing. It's like we're constantly revitalized,
level up.
vibrating higher,
Higher.
whatever term, kind of resonates for you. But I think that's always like the intention, maybe that's the better word, that's the intention, is to constantly find ways how we heal, whether that's literally you go get acupuncture or you get a massage or whatever, craniosacral therapy or whatever it is, but also you can heal through sound. So you can heal through like visual imagery, color. And so I'm thinking about all of those things when I am creating. It's like I know that sound, color, images, the way we speak, what we're saying is all, like, to put it simply, spells in a way. And I don't mean spells in like a negative connotation, but spells in a way that can really like enhance or shift our thinking or illuminate something within. And so it's like, I know my work is working in that way. And if my work is going to be a spell, in a sense, I want it to be the best spell, in that it like brings something out of your skin and gives you goosebumps or what have you. And so I think it's really important as artists that we have to realize, whether you're a musician, what you're saying, what you're speaking into the world, how you are like creating, like, or how you're orchestrating all the instruments, is impacting someone and it's affecting people in a particular way and it stays with you. Because I
Yeah.
mean, there are times where a song will come on my Apple Music, and it reminds me of a very particular event from a very particular moment in my life, and I can recall that memory, and I can recall the feeling I was having, the emotion, what was going on in my life that was impacting me. And so these things last with you; they don't dissipate. Even though we may not be thinking about it on a conscious level, these things stay with us subconsciously, and we're just like little sponges absorbing everything. And so for me as an artist, like, you know, I feel like my role and my duty in creating is to make sure that when people absorb my work, it is absorbing in a way that's healing or calling into question in a good way about things in their lives, or having them look differently at, you know, their childhood, or having them look differently at relationships in their lives. And so I think it's so crucial that we, as people who are consciously tapping into our creative side, to be very aware of that.
I am going to conclude that spelled to get inspiration to do better.
Yeah.
Oh my God, we gonna repeat that or write a title for that our interview. Uh, if anybody would like to ask more questions, we are very welcome to answer. Callie will answer them for you, and we may do another video about interesting for you topics about
I,
filmmaking, maybe more dreams,
oh
anything that
yes,
you
I
like.
would that. And part two.
Part two.
Yeah.
So for today, thank you very much for staying with us. I hope you enjoyed this, as I did enjoy it very much. It was lovely to hear it all out and bring all those conclusions.
Yes.
Uh, and all the links for the communication, if you like to connect with Kelly, like I don't know, website. Thank you very much for today,
Thank you.
and have a lovely day.
Take care. We will chat soon.
Okay, bye bye.